My name is Megan, and I want to share how I discovered that family isn't solely defined by blood ties. Sometimes, those expected to cherish you most may end up causing profound hurt. My entrance into the world was far from celebrated. My parents, freshly graduated from college with burgeoning careers and dreams, were taken aback by my mother's pregnancy. Considering it an ill-timed event, my mother contemplated abortion, but my grandparents intervened. They had been financially supporting my parents and made it clear, keep the baby or the financial support would cease. From the beginning, I was a secondary concern. My mother eagerly returned to her career, leaving me in the hands of various caregivers and my grandmother. While I appreciate their efforts, it didn't replicate the nurturing a child expects from their parents. As years passed, my grandparents stepped back to enjoy their retirement, leaving me to fend for myself from a young age. By 6, I was self-reliant, preparing meals, doing laundry, and readying myself for school, skills that were my survival toolkit. The dynamic in our household shifted dramatically when my mother became pregnant again. This time, they were prepared and elated. The arrival of my sister seemed to herald a new era of joy for my parents, who doted on her as if she were a precious gem, while I receded further into the background. The disparity in our treatment grew starkly evident as the years passed. My sister received the best of everything: attention, toys, clothes. Mistakes she made were dismissed with a chuckle, while I faced criticism and lectures about responsibility. Despite our financial stability, my needs were often overlooked. My parents viewed me as mature and independent, unworthy of the investments they poured into my sister. Consequently, I immersed myself in academics and extracurricular activities, striving for excellence in hopes of earning their regard. Yet, my achievements were met with indifference, overshadowed by my sister's trivial accomplishments. As high school concluded, I eagerly counted down the days until I could forge my path. I applied to colleges covertly, securing a place at a prestigious institution before informing my parents. When the acceptance came, I packed and left quietly, starting anew without their knowledge. It took 2 days for them to realize I was missing, and even then it was only because my mother needed something from the store. Her nonchalant phone call asking for yogurt as if nothing was amiss marked a poignant realization. I had learned to build my own life, independent and strong, beyond the confines of familial expectations. I couldn't help but find the humor in the situation as I embarked on a pivotal new chapter in my life, and yet all my mother could focus on was yogurt. Mom, I try to keep my voice calm. I'm not at home. I've been at college for 2 days. I'm living in the dorms now. There was a brief silence on the other end as she processed my words. Then, without any sense of regret or worry, she simply responded, "Oh, well, if you come back, you'll have to stay at a hotel. We've given your room to your sister." College life was a liberating experience, although financially challenging. My parents offered no support, but thankfully my grandparents, bless their hearts, helped me out. They sent me modest sums of money regularly, just enough to keep me going. It wasn't a lot, but it meant the world to me, not just the financial aid, but the knowledge that someone in my family cared. "Megan, dear," my grandmother would say during our infrequent calls, "we're so proud of you. Focus on your studies, all right? Don't worry about anything else." Her words were a balm to my soul. With this support, I immersed myself in my studies with a renewed determination not to disappoint them. I couldn't take on a part-time job due to my heavy course load and my commitment to excel academically. I managed my finances tightly, often subsisting on ramen, and stretched every penny as far as it could go. Back home, life went on without me. My sister, the perennial favorite, faced academic struggles, but it hardly mattered to my parents. They provided her with the best tutors and lavished praise and rewards on her for minimal improvements, excusing her failures. By my senior year, job offers were rolling in. Professors praised me, and my resume was sterling. I had options, but none felt quite right. I was determined to make it on my terms, to prove to myself, and perhaps to my family, that I could succeed independently. So I took a leap of faith and applied to a prestigious international company in Europe. It was a long shot, but I had nothing to lose. When I received the acceptance email, I was ecstatic. It was my gateway to a new life. I graduated with honors. My grandparents proudly watched in the audience. My parents sent a generic congratulations card, and my sister didn't even bother. But their lack of interest didn't faze me anymore. I was past seeking their approval. As I packed my bags for Europe, I considered saying goodbye to my parents, but decided against it. They had already shown how little I meant in their lives. Instead, I hugged my grandparents tightly, promising to keep in touch often. Life in Europe was more thrilling than I had ever imagined. Occasionally, I would call my parents. Old habits are hard to break, but each conversation felt forced and disinterested. They were always too busy or too distracted to engage, and they never called me first. Then everything changed when I met Eric in the marketing department. He was all charm and wit, with a smile that brightened any room. We started as colleagues, grew into friends, and before long, we found ourselves falling in love. When Eric proposed to me on a moonlit beach, I didn't need a moment to think. It was an immediate yes. As we started planning our wedding in France, Eric suggested, we should go tell your parents in person and invite them properly. It's the right thing to do. Filled with a mix of nervousness and naive hope, we flew back to the States, invitations in hand. The moment we stepped into my childhood home, the chilly reception was palpable. My parents were distant and barely acknowledged Eric, let alone our upcoming wedding. "Oh, that's nice," my mother muttered, more interested in her phone than in our news. She quickly mentioned how busy they were with renovations for my sister's new apartment. We ended up staying for a week, which stretched out uncomfortably long due to my parents' near-constant absences, always busy with my sister's place. Throughout that week, my sister was ever-present, her behavior towards Eric increasingly inappropriate, flirty smiles, batting eyelashes. One evening, she asked Eric to help her choose a paint color for her room. The discomfort on Eric's face was clear, and I couldn't hold back. "That's enough," I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "He's my fiancé. Back off." Her reaction was theatrical, a pout forming as she accused me of being selfish and stormed off. Predictably, it wasn't long before my mother confronted me, her expression thunderous. "How dare you speak to your sister that way?" she scolded. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly at the irony. "All you've done for me?" I retorted. "That's a joke, right? You've done nothing but ignore me my entire life." But it was futile. In their eyes, I would always be the antagonist, the unwanted child who demanded too much. That night, Eric and I retreated to a hotel. My old room had been converted into a gym for my sister. Lying there, I realized I had to let go of the hope that my family would ever change. "Let's go home," I whispered to Eric, feeling his arms pull me closer. "Back to France. This place isn't my home anymore. It hasn't been for a long time." "Okay," he replied simply, "let's go home." As we boarded the plane the next day, my emotions were a mix of relief and sorrow. Relief to escape the toxicity, and sorrow for the family connection I'd never truly have. Back in France, Eric and I dove back into wedding planning, eager to create our perfect day away from the shadows of the past. One evening, as we relaxed on our balcony overlooking the Tuscan hills, Eric asked, "Are you sure about not inviting your sisters?" I savored a sip of wine, its rich flavors mirroring the depth of my decision. "I've never been more certain," I replied. "After what happened, I can't have her there. Not now." He nodded, understanding filling his gaze. What I didn't share with him were the explicit and inappropriate messages my sister had started sending him on social media since our visit. I had stumbled upon them by accident on his phone. Eric, ever kind and embarrassed, had kept it to himself. But it only cemented my resolve. This wedding and our future would be ours alone, free from the drama and the pain of my family's indifference. The 5 months leading up to the wedding passed in a blur of cake tastings, venue visits, and dress fittings. Suddenly, we were just weeks away from the big day, and there was one important task I couldn't put off any longer. Taking a deep breath, I picked up the phone and dialed the number I knew by heart, despite the years. "Oh, Megan, what is it?" "We're rather busy at the moment, My mother's voice sounded distracted, as usual. I'm calling about the wedding. I've booked your flights and hotel. Everything's paid for. We'd love for you and Dad to come, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a pause before she replied. That's nice, dear. But what about your sister? We haven't received an invitation for her. I closed my eyes, steadying myself. She's not invited, Mom. After what happened during our last visit and the messages she's been sending Eric, I don't want her there. Messages? What messages? My mother's tone sharpened. The explicit ones, Mom. The ones she's been sending to my fiancé. It's inappropriate and disrespectful. I won't have that drama at my wedding. The line was silent, the kind of silence that was loud with unspoken thoughts. I knew my mother was probably searching for excuses for my sister's behavior, trying to make me the antagonist again. I don't know what you're talking about. Your sister would never do such a thing. Megan, be reasonable, she insisted. I am being reasonable. For once in my life, I'm putting myself first. You and Dad are welcome to come. The flight details will be emailed to you. I hope you'll be there, I replied, then she hung up without another word. The morning of my wedding was bright and beautiful. Everything was arranged perfectly, from the flowers to the music and the food. Yet, the 2 empty seats in the front row grew more conspicuous as the ceremony time approached. As guests began to fill the venue, a knot formed in my stomach. Eric, I said, my voice wavering slightly, can we delay the ceremony a bit? I need to make a call. His eyes filled with understanding and sympathy. Of course, Samore. Take all the time you need. With shaking hands, I dialed my mother's number again. It rang several times, and just as I was about to give up, there was a click. Hello, my mother's groggy, irritated voice came through. Mom, where are you? The wedding's about to start, I said, my voice a mix of hope and dread. There was a pause then. Megan, do you have any idea what time it is here? We were sleeping. It's the middle of the night. I felt a slap of disbelief. Sleeping? But the wedding, you were supposed to be here. I sent you the ticket, the hotel information, everything. Oh, that. Her voice turned cold. Well, we decided not to come. Your sister is having her housewarming party today. We couldn't miss that. I was stunned. Her housewarming? But she's known about my wedding date for months. Why would she schedule it for today? Don't be selfish, Megan. The world doesn't revolve around you. Besides, how could you expect us to go to one daughter's celebration and not the others? If you had invited your sister like you should have. Mom, I interrupted, my voice firm. You know why I didn't invite her. After what she did, that's all in your head, Megan. Your sister would never do such a thing. You've always been jealous of her, always trying to make her look bad. I laughed, a bitter, incredulous sound. Jealous? Is that what you think this is about? God, Mom. Do you even hear yourself? Don't take that tone with me, young lady. This is your fault. Your sister's party is none of my business. Hanging up, I turned back to Eric, tears brimming but my decision firm. Let's start our ceremony, Eric. Today is about us, our love, and the future we will build together. Not about the past I'm leaving behind. I ended the call sharply, just as my wedding was clearly none of their concern. Goodbye, Mom. Enjoy the party, I said, and hung up before she could reply. My hands trembled, but my resolve was unwavering. I glanced at my reflection, took a deep breath, and made a pivotal decision. So, I walked down the aisle alone. No father at my side to give me away, no mother in the crowd shedding tears. But seeing Eric at the altar, his eyes full of love, I realized I had everything I needed right there. Time does help heal, or at least dull, the sharp edges of old wounds. Eric and I built a fulfilling life together, marked by love, laughter, and career successes. We traveled, forged new friendships, and crafted a cozy home. My parents remained distant. No congratulations on our marriage, no holiday greetings. Eventually, I stopped looking for their names on my phone during holidays or on my birthday. Disconnecting was simpler. Then, one seemingly ordinary Tuesday in April, my phone rang, displaying an unfamiliar number from my hometown. My heart pounded as I answered. Megan? Is that you? My mother's voice, sounding older and wearier, came through. We need your help, she continued. The family business they had dedicated their lives to had collapsed. They were jobless and savings were non-existent. We've always lived well, you know that. We know we haven't been good parents, but we need help, please. A storm of emotions raged within me. Anger, satisfaction at their predicament, pity, and a tiny, hopeful spark that this might be the moment they'd finally appreciate me. Okay, I sighed. How much do you need? The amount was staggering, but Eric and I had been fortunate in our finances. I transferred the money, a tumult of feelings churning inside me. It's done, I told her. The money should be in your account soon. Over the next few months, a pattern emerged. Requests for money came frequently, each ask smaller than the last but incessant. And each time I complied. After one such transaction, Eric caught me with a resigned smile. They asked for money again, he inquired softly. I nodded. And again I sent it. God, when did I become such a pushover? You're not a pushover, amore. You're kind. It's not your fault they can't see what an amazing daughter they have, Eric reassured, his arm around my shoulders. It was a lazy Sunday afternoon when my perspective shifted dramatically. Idly scrolling through Facebook with a coffee in hand, I froze at a photo. There were my parents, looking relaxed and carefree, cocktails in hand, lounging by a pool at an upscale resort. I clicked through more photos. There they were again, dining at a Michelin-starred restaurant, posing in front of a luxury spa, clearly enjoying a lavish lifestyle. With a sinking feeling, I switched to my sister's page. My heart sank as I saw images of her with a new sports car at high-end bars, surrounded by designer shopping bags. The stark contrast between their pleas for help and their extravagant expenditures chilled me to the bone. As reality set in, I realized how manipulated I had been, financing a lifestyle for them that they had deceitfully presented as a desperate need. This revelation was a painful but necessary jolt, prompting me to reassess my generosity and the boundaries I needed to enforce with my family. The captions on my sister's posts gushed about them amazing gifts from the best parents in the world and how lucky she was to be the only child so blessed. My parents had added comments like, "Nothing but the best for our little princess, and you deserve it all, sweetheart." My hands trembled as I read, feeling nauseous. The phone slipped and clattered to the floor. Just then, as if on cue, my phone began to ring. It was them. I took a deep breath and answered. "Megan, dear." My mother's voice was unnervingly sweet. "We were wondering when you might be sending the next transfer. Life's been so hard, you know. We're thinking of renovating the house. It's gotten so old and dreary." Something inside me snapped. "I've seen the photos, Mom. The resort, the restaurants, the gifts for my sister. How dare you?" I confronted her, voice shaking. There was a pause. Then, chillingly cold, her voice changed. "Now you listen here. We gave you life. I could have had an abortion, you know, but we chose to have you. You owe us everything. Now, about that money," I didn't let her finish. I hung up, my entire body shaking with rage and hurt. The phone started ringing again and again. Text messages flooded in, toggling between guilt-tripping and demands. I turned the phone off. Over the next few weeks, my parents continued to call and message demanding money, then pleading, then threatening. I ignored it all. I blocked their numbers, unfriended them on social media, and cut off every avenue they had to reach me. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, of guilt, but whenever I wavered, I remembered those photos, those comments, the cruel words my mother had spat at me. Years passed and life evolved. Eric and I had built a successful life in Europe, but something was calling us back to the States. Maybe it was nostalgia, or maybe it was the desire to start our own family in familiar surroundings. Whatever the reason, we decided to return to my hometown. We settled into a new life in a quaint house in a quiet neighborhood, secured prestigious jobs, and started planning for the family we hoped to have soon. Everything felt like it was finally falling into place. One afternoon, while having coffee with an old school friend, I learned about the dramatic turn of events in my estranged family's life. "Did you hear about your sister's party?" my friend asked, her eyes wide with gossip. I shook my head, bracing myself for whatever was next. "It was wild," she continued. "After everyone left, she fell asleep while smoking in bed. The whole house went up in flames. Your sister made it out, but the house, it's completely destroyed, Megan." I sat there stunned. The house I grew up in, the site of so many conflicting memories, was reduced to ashes because of my sister's carelessness. "That's not even the worst part," my friend added. "Turns out your parents let the insurance lapse. They've lost everything." A part of me felt a twinge of satisfaction, which was quickly followed by guilt for feeling that way. But as I sipped my coffee and listened, I realized that this was just another chapter in the ongoing saga of my family's recklessness. A chapter one had closed long ago. But mostly, I felt nothing. My parents had made their choices, just as I had made mine. Life moved forward. Eric and I poured our energies into our careers, our home, and planning our future. Then, one sunny Saturday morning, a knock on the door upended the calm. I opened it to find my parents standing there, their appearances drastically altered. The designer outfits and coiffed hair were replaced by shabby clothes and graying, unkempt hair. "Megan," my mother began, her voice shaking, "we need your help." Frozen. I listened as they described their plight, living in a cramped, rented apartment, struggling to make ends meet with no savings and no support from their parents. They were unable to find work due to their age. Then my father added bitterly, "Your sister kicked us out of the apartment we bought for her and said she didn't have room for old people." I almost wanted to laugh at the irony, the golden child rejecting them as they had once rejected me. But the laugh died in my throat when I saw their desperate faces. "Please, Megan," my mother pleaded, "you're our only hope." For a fleeting moment, the little girl inside me, who had always longed for their love and approval, wanted to let them in. But then my mother's tone shifted to demanding. "After all, I could have aborted you. You owe us your life." That was the moment the spell broke. A calm settled over me, a certainty like never before. "No," I said firmly, my voice clear. "I don't owe you anything. Not for giving birth to me. Not for the years of neglect. Not for choosing my sister over me time and time again. You made your choices. Now you have to live with them. I'm asking you to leave. If you don't, I'll call the police." My father tried to step forward, but I stood my ground. "I mean it. Leave now and don't come back." They left eventually, hurling insults and threats as they went. I closed the door, leaning against it as tears came. Not tears of sadness or regret, but of relief, of closure. That night, I called my grandparents. They had always been my steadfast supporters, even from afar. They listened as I recounted everything, offering words of comfort and support. "You did the right thing, Megan," my grandmother assured me. "You can't set yourself on fire to keep others warm, especially those who wouldn't even notice if you burned." As I hung up, a profound peace washed over me. The last ties to my toxic past had been severed. The future stretched out before me, bright and filled with possibilities.